Russia's invasion of Ukraine isn't limited to a military assault. The Kremlin is actively deploying misinformation and disinformation against not only Ukraine, but also on its own soil, where state-controlled media calls the invasion a self-defense action. Less than 2 weeks ago, Russian President Vladimir Putin made it illegal to contradict official government statements. Reporters face up to 15 years in prison for anything the Kremlin deems a false report about the Russian military. For more, let's bring in Nika Aleksejeva in Riga, Latvia. She's the lead digital forensic researcher in the Baltic States at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, which spends a lot of time researching this subject. Nika, just in the last 24 hours, your organization has publicized efforts by Russian hackers in Ukraine. What are you seeing right now?
Yes, so currently we are seeing that information space indeed is the battlefield, and Russia is fighting in two fronts. One front is apparently and obviously in and with Ukraine. That messaging targets both Ukrainians who are demoralized. The aim is to demoralize them, demoralize Ukrainians, their soldiers, convinced to give up. That's where this deep fake of Zelensky saying to surrender comes in. But another front is domestic one, where Kremlin also needs to convince their own fellow citizens why invasion was necessary, why the so-called military operation is in fact doing good than bad. And so propaganda machine is working fully to provide justifications for the so-called military operation. And of course, because we are living in digital environment, it's not 20th century anymore. There is more and more censorship involved, like taking down or blocking access to mainstream social media platforms as Facebook, Twitter, and as you mentioned, indeed, punishing people for using wrong wording and things alike.
Yeah, I mean, your organization has been monitoring things in Ukraine for years. You've mentioned some of this just now, but I mean, how have Russian tactics and messaging and their ability to reach people and try to convince them of something other than the reality changed in recent years?
So before, it was mostly denying Russia's presence in Ukraine at all. We can recall 2014 when there were so-called green men. Everyone knew that was Russia, but Russia always denied it. So our work throughout these 8 years was actually to expose Russia where it didn't want to be exposed. So tracking military movements, verifying if it's Russian military equipment, and catching Kremlin in lies when it says it's not deploying Iskander, where we clearly see it is. For now we see apparently and preparing for another military buildup that now resulted in full-scale invasion.
You know, there are a lot of heartbreaking things that have come out of this 21, 22 days or so of conflict, but we've seen and heard of Ukrainians and Russians who share very different accounts of what's happening in Ukraine. Some of them family members or close friends who live in either country, who just have profound disagreements about reality. What are some of the measures the Kremlin's implemented to control information that Russians are able to see and read about that in many ways are causing some of these disputes even within families?
Indeed. So first, information influence was carried out throughout this whole time. If I'm talking about the Baltic States, it's the last 20 years since Putin came into power and started slowly but persistently taking over control over Russian media. And in countries where there is enough population speaking Russian in the so-called Russian world, propaganda worked for a very extensive period of time, providing so-called Kremlin's worldview. You know, RT is also about how Russia sees the world. Mm-hmm. And so these echo chambers existed. And now, because still we see bombings in Kiev, which is not Donbass, as Kremlin wants to convince their own fellow citizens. We see that Kremlin is banning Meta as Facebook and Instagram, also Twitter and imposing many censorship measures, also just closing down independent media outlets and international media outlets as BBC, Deutsche Welle, and basically taking control over all information space as much as it can reach.
Well, Nika Aleksejeva with the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, we thank you for joining us. We especially thank you for staying up late in Latvia tonight to talk to us and for sharing all of your expertise on this. Hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thank you.